Show tonight. A lot to talk about. Yes, we got to talk about automaker fallout. There's a crash or a collapse in the automobile market. Inventory is way up. Our sales down. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the effect that it has, because this isn't all bad news. Prices will be coming down and have been because inventory is high. So we'll talk about how to get a good deal, what models to watch for. We've got the full list, so you'll know exactly which vehicles you should expect the best deals on, and you'll have the arguments ready with you that when you go into the dealer, you can tell them, hey, I know this model has a ton of inventory, some surprises in there, such as the Toyota RAV4, GM and Ford at the top for certain models. So you'll know exactly what models to get a great deal on, folks. So I'm here to do that, to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll talk about dealer inventory being high, but how this can be great. We'll also be talking specifically about the fallout at Ford. This is rough, folks. Production could be going outside of the US. There's a possible UAW strike about to happen at a very important plant for Ford. This is bad news. Up to 3,000 workers potentially striking in the next roughly 5 to 8 days. So this could be devastating to Ford. It could absolutely be changing Ford's plans in regards to production in the US. We'll be talking about Ford reliability. So we'll start the show by talking about all makes, all the manufacturers: Toyota, Subaru, Nissan, Ford, GM, Dodge, Ram, Buick, Cadillac, Audi, Mercedes, Acura. We'll be going through them all, folks, including BMW. So we'll be looking at which models have the highest inventory, so you know which models to hunt for to get a good deal. The WB, thank you so much for making it in. Sunjib, thank you very, very much. Randy, thanks for making it in. Folks, as you come into the show, just say howdy, say hi to the group. We're a friendly group, and it's good to catch up with each other. Now, we'll also be talking about new models and huge changes at Ford. So yeah, the show, you can see the huge changes are about what's going down at Ford, but we'll also be talking about huge changes that have been going on with the entire auto market. This huge crash or collapse that people are talking about. Most people will view this as negative, but I've got some amazing news to share about it, because as buyers, it's starting to become a buyer's market, folks, and I like that. Rich GT350R, great name, great vehicle. We'll be talking about a Shelby in this episode when we're talking about reliability, so very cool talk about some crazy great reliability out of a Shelby. Those vehicles, they've got superchargers. So when a motor can handle a supercharger and still do hundreds of thousands of miles, it's worth talking about. But we'll talk about general reliability at Ford, general reliability studies across the market that all brands get affected by. So huge changes at Ford, new models, changes to models. We'll cover all that. Now, we're also going to be talking about how Ford is going to be completely changing things when it comes to electric vehicles. So let's cover the question. Is Ford done with electric vehicles? Is it a one and done? Or is this just the very beginning and you better get ready to buckle up as more electric vehicles come in? We'll talk about what kind of electric vehicles are going to be coming to Ford and the market across this show to give you a really good idea of what you can expect in the future, to know maybe you should buy now while you can still get an interesting, great gas-powered vehicle, a good petrol-powered vehicle. Get one before it's too late. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Ford Maverick refresh. We'll talk about a possible new Ford Ranger model. Got some photos of that. Very exciting. Talk about the Ford Bronco plug-in, why I think it's happening, roughly when it's happening, Ford Maverick haul over, what we might get out of the vehicle in regards to style inside and out. So very exciting show Ford, folks. And we'll be talking about how Ford is losing billions per year on EVs. It's disgusting. It's horrible. It could potentially collapse Ford, but will it collapse Ford? Will Ford be forced off this EV path? So one and done? Or should we buckle up because we're about to get a whole lot more EVs? We'll be covering this from both, the journalist aspect of looking what's being talked about across the entire realm of the automobile journalist perspective, but we'll also be talking about this from an insider perspective, because I'm an insider. I've got information that I'm looking forward to sharing with you folks. It's going to be a fun episode tonight, so please, I'm following along best I can here in the comment section, following what's being said. So folks, as you get in, please say hi. I will try. This thing, of course, always seems to drop. I have to keep refreshing it, so it's a little distracting. Jeff H, welcome to the show. You've had your XLT Maverick for 9 months, and you and your wife love it. Thank you very much for sharing it. I love it. We've got a community here that's a friendly community that helps each other out with information, and I just love how we assist each other. Now, Ridgeview probably isn't going to be in tonight because I bet he's still in the process of picking up his Maverick. So I think this one's going to be his personal Maverick, because I think his first 2 Mavericks he let go to his kids. Generous man, normally always spending every single week here with us in the comment section as our moderator. The WB is always here as well. Glenda Milligan just received her 2024 XLT Maverick Hybrid, and she loves it as well. And I can tell you, I'm mostly only ever hearing comments about people. It's very rare that you hear negative comments about the Ford Maverick. Overwhelmingly good news, happy, positive vibes in regards to the Ford Maverick. But there's a lot of talk about, what direction should the Ford Maverick go? Should we get more, expensive models, ST with a bigger engine? Or should Ford keep it, simple, stupid to help keep that price down? We'll talk about that a little bit in the refresh, because there are a lot of expensive vehicles on the market these days, and that's actually where we're starting the show off. So just to give you a bit of a run through, we'll be talking about prices, average prices here. You can see how they've gone up over the few years. We'll be talking about exciting new models, potentially 1,000 horsepower out of an electric engine coming to Ford, Puma electric, plug-in Ford, super high mileage Shelby, Ford Mustang Shelby. We'll be talking about the next generation of EV vehicles, if they're going to happen, why they're going to happen, or why not. We'll cover all this so you're ready. New Ford Ranger models. So it is an exciting episode, folks. I'm happy you're here. We're now up to more people. We're talking about the UAW strike. This is all sorts of big news, folks. Let's get straight to it. Please, before we officially start, just hit the thumbs up button. Please subscribe. Share this information, because that's how this small family business survives, folks. So let's start with episode 1. Automaker fallout. Yes. Whether, car manufacturers, truck manufacturers, SUV manufacturers, all the brands are going through what we could call a fallout or a collapse. Major changes coming for these automakers. It's a scary place, and you might be thinking, boy, if all these titles that I'm seeing from journalists are that there's this collapse, there's this crash, maybe it's a horrible time to buy. I'd say no, it's gonna slowly force everyone. Some people are already on the dropped price train, and it's gonna slowly force every manufacturer. You can see all the way from Toyota, that has very low inventory, but some models you should still get a great deal on because they have very high inventory on, from Toyota and Honda. So even though Toyota, Honda, Kia, Lexus, BMW, Subaru, Cadillac, and Volkswagen, as well as Hyundai, all have very low inventory, Toyota being the worst, you can still get a great deal on some of their models, and those are the models that have a lot of inventory at dealers. Toyota RAV4 has a lot of, in general, overall, a ton of inventory at dealers. And if there's a lot of inventory, that means they're paying a lot of interest. These days, dealers are paying roughly 8% interest on the vehicles they have on the lot. So they're motivated to get that metal moving. So's the manufacturer, because the manufacturer, of course, just sells to the dealers. But then the dealers are paying interest and complaining, and can start saying, don't send us more vehicles, or slow down, cut what you're sending us in half. Dealers have that control because they are separate businesses. Co-op CRC, thank you very much for enjoying the show, as well as the politics. We'll talk about that, because I got a warning, which is 1 step towards a strike, 3 strikes, and my channel gets completely deleted because I covered news on what the Florida Surgeon General talked about. So that was my live. If you check out the live about Ford's done doing boring, it was at the 1:42 mark. I just played a clip from Fox News, commented that no matter who is correct in this, because there's no proof that either side, whether it's the FDA or the Florida Surgeon General, no matter who's correct about this, what's important is that we can have discussions, dialogue, share the data that both sides have to come to the best conclusions as possible, that we still have free speech. And my free speech got cut by being threatened to take away my business. So thank you very much, YouTube. I need to be a little more cautious, it would be appear, because apparently saying that free speech is important and not taking a side of an argument can be deemed as misinformation. So that's the 142 mark when I was playing a clip from Fox News. But this shouldn't get me banned or a strike, because the next time they talk to me, it's going to be a strike. This is automobile news, so good and safe, real good and safe information. So we do have automaker fallout. So let's quickly cover all the good, the bad, and the ugly. Dealer inventory is high, folks, and I'm going to show that to you in a photo I've got here of, well, my local dealer, and this is the case pretty much at all dealers. You can see traditionally we had this yard filled, and this is a good example of what's going on in almost every dealer. Not Toyota, not Honda, but we'll look at which dealers have the most inventory, and you should be getting a great deal from them. You can see this whole front line is trucks, the roadside line, that's all trucks. Well, normally we'd have a few trucks on the other side of the dealership. We're now renting 2 other yards. So yes, Ford knows we've got more truck inventory than possibly we have ever had. Ford's at about a little over 100 days of inventory. And for the models we have a lot of inventory on, great. For the buyers, it means Ford's getting all sorts of pressure from the dealers. Dealers are tired of paying 8% on what's now $50,000 to $100,000 machines. Imagine if you have a $100,000 machine for 1 year and you're paying 8% interest on that, and it's compound interest. Every month it gets tallied up. What does this mean, folks? It means Ford is getting pressure from dealers to do something about this inventory crisis. So prices are collapsing. I remember a year ago, at this time last year, Ford F-150 on average was about $7,000 more expensive. So Ford's dropped the prices on those F-150s, and you can probably get the dealer to work out a little something extra for you, a few presents, because as dealers, we definitely want to get rid of some models. And I say some models because, well, an XLT Sport 6.5 foot box won't be produced from Ford until Job 2. Tremors aren't going to start being produced until Job 2, so that means halfway through the 2024 year production. So there are definite models that dealers are a little more in a hurry to sell than other models. So a straight XLT, for example, or a Lariat, maybe a little more, costs more interest. A Platinum costs more interest. So those are the type of questions you can ask the dealer. What models are you in a hurry to get rid of? More so than other models. What models are you willing to make a deal on? But right now, from what I've seen for the last couple months, Ford is either offering 0 or close to 0% interest and no rebate, or higher interest but a huge rebate. And that's what you're going to see across the models. Now Nissan, I've got a Nissan dealer near me, and they've got more inventory than they've ever had. They've had to buy out an extra 60 spots. So there's a next door neighbor's a gym. They bought the back parking lot of the gym, filled it with an extra 60 vehicles that in the last 30, 40 years of this dealer existing, they never had to have vehicles off-site. They bought an extra parking lot. GM, they are booked. So let's look at the companies that are affected most here, folks. The ones that you can likely get the best deals at, and then we'll go model by model. So here you can see Jaguar, worst inventory. They're above 130 days of inventory. That means if they had no new vehicles come in, it would take them roughly 130 days on average to sell what's on the dealer lots. Now, if they had a strike, for example, if they had a strike for 130 days, take 130 days so that there wouldn't be any, or, another pandemic or something that completely stops production, it would take them 130 days to sell what they have, meaning they're paying It's taking them longer to sell vehicles. You know, the takeaways from this is high days in inventory means it's taking longer to sell those vehicles, and they're paying more interest on it. So a Jaguar dealer that tries to play hardball with you, saying, oh, you know, our vehicles are, you know, we have very low inventory and we're in no hurry to sell these vehicles, so you're being sold some ice. You know, what they're telling you isn't true. Maybe for one or two Jaguar models, but in general, Jaguar needs to move metal. Those dealers are paying a ton of interest. Lincoln, they need to move metal. But of course, there's exceptions. The new Nautilus is a very hot item. I think possibly I think it's the most technologically advanced. At least when you're inside that vehicle, it feels like it's 5 years ahead of almost anything else on the market. It's an incredible interior and it's a beautiful exterior. You've got, so those, the new 2024 Nautiluses, yeah, people aren't going to be getting a rebate on those. Those are hot ticket items. Some dealers, because they're rare, we don't have enough, they might even try to get a little bit more out of you. So supply and demand, that's what's driving this, folks. So yes, there is an automaker or manufacturer fallout. There is a collapse in prices because inventory is high. So Infiniti, Buick, Ram, Chrysler, Dodge, Audi, Mini, Jeep, Ford, all companies that you should see rebates on the prices of their vehicles. Ford is, just currently they've gone up to just a little bit over 100 days of inventory. So it's a little different from when this chart was made, but the order is still generally pretty good here. Pretty representative. Porsche, I'm even starting to see some Porsche 911s, brand new for sale. Not a ton of them, so it's not as if they're going to give you a great deal, but they're no longer in a position to ask for an extra $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 over invoice. Yes, the WB makes a great point. It is amazing how many cars there are available on the market now. Now you've got Mazda around the middle and Chevrolet around the middle. So you can't expect as much of a rebate on those models as you can the ones over at this end of the chart. Now Toyota and Honda, Kia, Lexus, BMW, Subaru, Cadillac, and Volkswagen, generally going in, don't expect a huge rebate. They've got relatively low inventory. A good amount of inventory is about 50 to 80 days worth of supply. That is, a nice, safe amount of inventory to be running. So what vehicles can you get a great deal on because of high inventory? Well, on average, let me tell you folks, on average, prices have gone down. The current price is $47,401. So that's quite a big difference. So you got $47,401 as the current price. We can see back in 2022, 2023, we had higher prices. And well, they skyrocketed, of course, when they had those factory closures, when we were all told to stay at home. We were all told we were dealing with, this horrifically deadly disease going around. So inventories went down. People were staying at home. People were bored. People bought vehicles. But new vehicles weren't being made. So that made it so that rebates disappeared. Inventories went down. Rebates disappeared. And then prices increased dramatically. Heck, you used to be able to lease in Canada. You used to be able to lease a Ford F-150 Lariat for about $750, $800 a month. And now it's $1,300 a month if you want to lease the same machine. Vehicles, an XLT 302 that was $62,000 with roughly a $7,000 rebate or 0% and about a $4,000 rebate is now up to $74,000, $75,000. And just recently, 3-4 months ago, no rebate, but now recently we're either looking at 0% or about $7,500 off. So huge difference. So the average transaction price has actually gone down from a year ago by 3.5%. That is a huge difference, folks. And there's some models, because of high inventory, the prices have changed incredibly. The two best examples on the market right now, think about the Ford F-150 Lightning, the second best example. Wait until you find out about the best example for price decrease on the market. So stay tuned here, folks. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and share this information. But the vehicle with the second biggest price decrease is the Ford F-150 Lightning. I'm a victim of this, but if you haven't bought yet, you won't be a victim. You could be a winner. But beginning of 2023, the Ford F-150 Lightning, for example, a Lariat 511, the model with the big battery and all the equipment, was $112,000 Canadian. Then around May, June, it dropped by $10,000, but interest was up by around 8%, right around 7.99. Since June, with that $10,000 decrease, however, higher interest. I originally got 4.99 interest because, well, I waited. I was a day one orderer. But we've seen 7.99 interest and even 8.49 interest on the Lightning. Now, interest is down unbelievably low on the Lightning. I think just recently we can access a 3.99%, and throughout the year the price dropped by $10,000. But what about the model with the biggest rebate that I have seen? Well, at one point in early 2023, a Mach-E Ford Mustang Mach-E Premium was $82,000. So that would be the premium all-wheel drive with big battery, $82,000 and so many hundred, let's say roughly $82,500 for a Mach-E Premium big battery in Canada. Then they dropped the price by roughly $10,000 and it became a $72,200 to $73,500 vehicle, depending on options. And now, as of last week, because inventory, what happened? Ford F-150 Lightning, tons of inventory. At first, no inventory. They raised the prices, tons of inventory. They dropped the prices, more inventory. They dropped the interest rate a great deal. Well, for the Mustang Mach-E, same story is true. High price, around 82,000 Canadian, dropped it down to 72,000. Just got dropped down by another $5,000, folks. And the interest rate got cut by 3%. And the interest rate was already lower than it was earlier on in the year. So throughout the year, it's almost roughly about a 5% percentage interest decrease, which represents off the original price. Heck, we're talking about what, $8,000 to $10,000 of interest that has been removed from the Mustang Mach-E, plus a $10,000 rebate. Now a $5,000 rebate. And this means that you can have government rebates. It applies for government rebates. So you get a $12,000 government rebate. So a vehicle that started off the beginning of the year being roughly $1,500, $1,600 per month is now about $800 per month. That is insane. The monthly payment has been decreased. It does help, the $12,000 after tax government rebate, but that's basically a 50% decrease in monthly payment. So finally, the Mustang Mach-E is affordable because at $1,600, it didn't make any sense. My Ford F-150 at originally roughly about $2,000 a month, and I put, $8,000 down on it just so I could have $1,636 a month. That is a huge payment. It is wild, and I thought it'd be so much popular on the show, but it looks like a lot of people, the huge majority of people, are still preferring gas or petrol-powered vehicles. We'll talk about that more in the show, but those are the worst, those are the best deals. Now, the worst deals on the market are going to be vehicles that are still have higher demand than supply. And it doesn't mean the vehicle has to be wildly popular, it just has to have more demand than supply. So if the supply is very, very low, but the demand is low, that'll still make it so that there are very few models on the market, and dealers will probably still play around with price. They certainly won't give you a good deal on it, and they might increase the price on it. So let's check out, these are the vehicles with the most nationwide inventory. This is how you spot a deal, folks. Likely you'll get offered a deal, and if they don't offer it to you, you can argue or discuss a deal. You can debate a deal out. Remember, freedom of speech and debate are incredibly important. Jailing reporters because, basically the vice president of Canada, call it a vice president, it's not its deputy minister, but the prime minister of Canada had their bodyguard body check a much older journalist and then charge him with assault, all part of the process of trying to censor journalists that ask the tough questions, that ask questions about, why are we going towards war? Why aren't we talking about peaceful options? What happened during COVID? It's ridiculous. I can't even believe our small community here, our small channel, got threatened to have the business completely disappear and completely destroyed and completely deleted from YouTube because I played a clip from Fox News where the Surgeon General is making certain health recommendations. And I even said, he may be right or he may be wrong. What's important is that we have freedom of speech and we can have dialogue, because through dialogue, parties can share their information with each other and we can come to better conclusions to avoid bad consequences. And of course, freedom of speech is important in order to keep people, general population, sane and satisfied. So that's why, and free press anyways was meant to be free to challenge the ruling, the current ruling parties, so that they don't have a monopoly on information. So folks, thank you so much for staying with the show. You've got the Chevrolet Silverado 1500 with the highest nationwide inventory, almost 51,000. The Ford F-150, 45,600. You should expect big deals out of this. Now, if Chevrolet Silverado 1500 isn't cutting you a deal, which I think their deal isn't quite that hot, because these days people are cross-shopping and they're telling me, well, your price is very similar to Chevrolets. And traditionally, a Ford F-150 was always a little bit more expensive, a little bit better as well. Long-term reliability, I feel that it's better from what I've seen. And also, well, they don't rust out. The panels are made of aluminum. More expensive to make, a little bit more expensive to buy traditionally. So it's not normal that we're pretty much at the same price overall as a Silverado 1500. And Nissan Rogue, you should get a great deal on those. There's a lot of them. A Ram 1500, expect a deal. And for a long time, Ram has been collecting dust at dealers and they're still not willing to make a deal. And that's a mistake. Ram needs to drop the price on those vehicles and dealers need to be willing to make a deal. So if they're not willing to negotiate a deal with you, if you're not seeing thousands of dollars off the price of a Ram 1500, walk away, folks. Same with all the ones above, including an F-150. If you're not getting an incredible deal, whether it's 0% or $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 off the vehicle, walk away. Dodge Charger, I'm surprised. They're a dying breed. You think people would be scooping these up? Honda CR-V. So remember, Honda overall as a brand has the second lowest days in inventory. That means overall the brand, the second rarest brand to find a vehicle for. But you should still expect a deal out of the Honda CR-V because they've got 19,800 of them. Chevrolet Equinox, 18,600, expect a deal. GMC Sierra 1500, 18,500, expect a deal. It's very similar to the Chevrolet 1500 anyway. So even though Chevrolet has pretty low inventory, they've got a lot of trucks. General rule of thumb, if it's a truck, rule of thumb, expect a deal. If not, walk away. You've got the Honda Civic, good, very good vehicle. Reliability isn't quite as high as it was. Same thing for the Honda CR-V. The reliability has gone down a little in the last 5 years. Honda's going down the bad road of using CVT transmissions, and it's a mistake. Overall, they're not reliable, folks. Toyota RAV4, expect a deal. Now, Toyota is the brand with the lowest inventory, even though their production is at relatively record high. 2023 was one of their best years for production in their history. And North American dealers have very few vehicles. Well, that's because they're going overseas. They're going to regions, coincidentally, that have better profit margins for them. So I'd expect prices to go up at Toyota. If inventory goes up, I'm thinking they're going to want to make the type of profit that they're making in other sectors. So Toyota will follow that story closely. Outsider Reviews, thank you so much for joining the show, folks. Check out his channel. Great channel. We've got M. Peugeot. Thank you very much for making it into the show. Twin Force Fusion. Thank you very much, folks. Outsider Reviews, as always, thank you very much for dropping some great information for the community to go over. Now, Mazda CX-5, so check out his channel, subscribe to his channel. Mazda CX-5, relatively high inventory at 16,800. Ram 2500, you'll find a lot of those. Expect a deal. Ford Explorer, inventory recently was very low, but we got a whole bunch of them right off. However, and the deal, previously there was no rebate, high interest. Ford is giving, a deal on the Ford Explorer because, from 1 month to another, you'll either probably see $3,000 or $4,000 off the vehicle or a good interest rate. Right now, the standard interest rate for automakers, they're paying roughly, let's say 7 to 8%. So anything below 7%, you could say subsidizing that better interest rate. So that's a form of a good deal. Subaru Forester, decent. Hyundai has overall low inventory, but the Tucson, they've got good inventory of that, so expect a good deal. Ford Bronco Sport, 13,400, number 19 on the list. I can tell you, I can confirm as an insider, yes, the Ford Bronco Sport, there are good deals on it. Ford's offering thousands of dollars off to make it move. Honda Accord, good vehicle. You should get a good rebate. Jeep Wrangler 4xe, maybe the dealer will play hardball, and if so, walk away. But just the Jeep Wrangler 4xe model, they've got 13,200 of those out there. Expect a deal. Toyota Camry, fantastic vehicle, very, very reliable. Expect a deal. Toyota Tundra, 13,000. Ford Mach-E, 12,800. You'll see all these channels covering how Ford is in so much trouble because of this high inventory. Well, it's actually 24th highest at 12,800. And yes, there is an incredible deal. Ford just dropped the interest rate by 3% and $5,000 in Canada. And that means now the premium big battery, or 91 kilowatt battery, gets the $12,000 government rebate. So these things are going to move fast. Yes, I've seen Mach-E's piling up, but I do strongly believe they're going to sell quick. I already have. Last week, I had 2-3 appointments for them, for people who are, really watching that deal change. And I've got about already 3 or 4 appointments for next week. Dealer has about 100 Mach-E's. They're all going to sell. Ford's not stupid. They're not going to let these vehicles become, 2-3 years old sitting in dealer lots. They will make them move. The market is correcting itself. And smart manufacturers are cutting into rebates, cutting down those interest rates to move vehicles quickly. So for even the Ford Broncos on the list here at number 39 with 8,900 Ford Broncos at dealer lots. Some of those will be customer orders. So we go down. Top SUVs with the most inventory: Nissan Rogue, Honda CR-V, Chevrolet Equinox, and number 4, Toyota RAV4, number 5, Mazda CX-5. Expect a good deal on all of those models. Those are your top 5 SUVs with the highest inventory. Now, top coupes with the most inventory: number 1, Dodge Charger. Number 2, Honda Civic. Number 3, Dodge Challenger. Number 4, Nissan Sentra. And number 5, the Honda Accord. So the Dodge Charger, 20,600 models. The Honda Accord, 13,319. And a close 6, Toyota Camry. Subaru Outback, little drop there in units, 11,393. The Nissan Altima, number 8 at 10,518. And number 9, Ford Mustang with 8,505. And the Hyundai Elantra with 8,300. And yes, Ford Mustang's number 9, and Ford did just recently reduce the interest rate significantly on these to get them moving, folks. So make sure you get a deal when you're looking at those vehicles. So I know that's information that's going to help you get a better deal, folks. It'll help you save thousands. help this family business not make thousands, but make a few bucks for their doing this live together. Of course, I enjoy doing these with you, but it's also great having a little money come in to pay for that Ford Bronco, which I'll be producing, editing some videos on very recently, and the Lightning, as well as 2 old Porsche 911s that I'm tinkering around with, and a Toyota MR2 91, which is still broken, but I've ordered about $1,800 worth of parts for now, and race seats, not part of that $1,800. So help support, hit the like, share the information, and hit the bell notification and the subscribe button so you don't miss out. That's what really helps this channel. And when you let the shows run from beginning to the end. Now, folks, that covers a huge topic for our first topic. All the other topics coming up are actually quite a bit faster. So get ready for a little bit faster pace. Prices, remember, they did drop 3.5% from last year, but that's an average. Some vehicles have dropped. That's an average across all makes and models. Some vehicles have dropped by a lot more than that. So look for those models. Like the Mach-E, the monthly payment has basically dropped in half on certain Mach-E models from beginning of 2023. We're now early 2024, and I'm looking at payments that cost half as much. So now we're starting to see some incredible deals out there, folks. You just need to be looking. However, less people are looking because they've been getting burnt for the last 3 years, which is wild because at the peak of prices, up here, peak of prices was early 2023. Tons of people were walking through the front doors at dealers. Weren't questioning and saying, hey, this seems a little expensive. My pickup truck payment has almost doubled. Maybe I should keep my pickup. But tons of people were going through the front door. Now prices have come down, and on certain models like the Mach-E or the Lightning, the monthly payments have dramatically dropped, and people aren't coming in through the front door. So that's why it pays to be informed, because just like the stock market, if you're buying stocks, down here, no one's buying, whatever stock you're looking at. Very few people are buying it. And that's when it costs the less amount of money. That's when it's a deal. And then when it gets expensive, stocks and vehicles, oddly, that's when there's all the hype. And people are still loading in on a stock right before the crash. Well, prices have crashed on average by 3.5%, and that's over 1 year. That doesn't count inflation. So let's say inflation is at 4%, not quite, but let's round off 2023 inflation at 4%. If we have a 3.5% decrease overall on all vehicles by 3.5%, that means vehicle prices have actually dropped by 7% because they didn't go up with inflation. So I think that's important to keep in mind. Will prices go down a bit more? Yes, on 2023 models that are still available in yards for the next 1, 2, and 3 months, you will continue to see prices drop on these models. Big rants here. No, I guess M Peugeot are rants. They're 100% safe for us because we know we're not spreading misinformation. They are safe, but they get deemed, our free speech gets slapped on the hand, and we're getting cut a little. So some people will be happy. There'll be less safer rants or less rants, and others maybe not so much. So let's cover this up. Let's cover this, folks. We've talked about fallout in the auto market, the auto industry. All the manufacturers are looking at fallout. If they're smart, they've already dropped their prices. If they're a little less smart, they'll drop their prices as of next month. And if they're dumb, they won't drop their prices, and they're just going to have their inventory skyrocket. They'll have very dissatisfied dealers. The dealers are going to start saying no to new vehicles, and that's going to affect their reputation because journalists, as we know, throughout each quarter of the year, they like to report on who's selling the most, what models are selling the most, what manufacturers are selling the most. Now, here's a story that's going to talk about inventory and how it might get negatively impacted. So, episode 2, here we go, folks. Let's cover it. Fallout at Ford. This is big. So, this is going to lead to some big changes at Ford. Major fallout at Ford. Now, we do know that there was the auto union, the auto workers went on strike last, October, November. They're on strike for about 6 weeks. A deal got worked out. People went back to work. So thank you very much, Brett Foote from Ford Authority, for this article. UAW workers might be striking again at a very important factory. That's the factory making the Expedition and making the Super Duty. And big vehicles at Ford means big bucks. And during the UAW strike, remember, what factory closed? This factory. And it really hurt Ford's bottom line. It's made Ford quite nervous because Jim Farley has even said, there hadn't been a strike at Ford, I think, since roughly about 1973. And that gave a lot of, reasoning for Ford to have models, very important models, produced in America. However, when they produced the vehicles in America, the Mexican-made trucks, their counterparts, have a much lower cost of production. But Ford kept making them here for various reasons, but one of those reasons was because those vehicles were safe. They're getting built well, but Ford's plants, factories, assembling factories down in Mexico have made very good vehicles. The Mach-E's, the Ford Mavericks, the Bronco Sports, the paint coming in on those vehicles are great. Maybe it has to do with humidity. Maybe the U.S. factories up north are a little more humid on the inside, but I'm seeing nicer looking paint on average coming out of the Ford's Mexican factories. So just keep that in mind. You've got the Lincoln Navigator being built here, and you've got possibly 3,000 workers going on strike within the next 5 or 7 days. This isn't impressing Ford. So let's talk about that. So according to the UAW, around 9,000 workers at the Kentucky truck plant plan to strike on February 23rd, 2024. So this is from Ford Authority. Great job, Brett Foote, covering this. You can read this on Ford Authority. So let's continue here. Quoting Ford Authority, if some local contract issues aren't resolved between now and then, there'll be a strike on the 23rd. So these concerns pertain to the UAW Local 862, which the automaker hasn't reached an agreement as of yet. So different factories, you can have an overall agreement reached, but each factory gets to vote on its own because they've got their own individual issues to work through. So there's still issues to work through here, and a few remaining points that the UAW members at the Kentucky plant want addressed and dealt with, including health and safety related matters, minimum in-plant nurse staffing levels. Well, that seems very reasonable. Who wants to work in a factory where if you get hurt, help is 20, 30 minutes away? You want that help. That makes sense. You want that help at the factory. And ergonomic issues, to name just a few. So according to Ford Authority, those are the issues. So the UAW Local 862 does have the ability to walk out. They don't have to sign the overall same agreement as every other factory. They can have their own plant-specific agreement. So back in mid-November, 45% of production workers did vote in favor of the tentative contract, and 69% of skilled trade workers. But this factory, nothing's ratified yet. They haven't agreed, and it has caused Jim Farley, well, not just this incident, but early on, the fact that Ford had originally had a very good relationship with the UAW, had avoided strikes since the early 1970s. So higher production costs in the U.S., as buyers, I can tell you, I like it when my vehicle is built, for us, by us. But Jim Farley saying this could very much affect future plans. So Ford, also Brett Foote, this guy's great. Look at him go. Brett Foote on Ford Authority on February 15th covered this. Ford CEO Farley says UAW strike influencing future plans. So what's going on right there? Well, the vehicles made in the U.S. the new negotiated contract, Ford says, is going to cost them an extra $1.3 billion in, paying workers and meeting worker demand. So that's the UAW strike. What they negotiated, Ford says it's going to cost $1.3 billion off their bottom line. But he did say that they would make this up by reducing inefficiencies. And I can talk as an insider about what kind of inefficiencies they can possibly be talking about. Ford has been working, and we see it in the 2024 order guides for many, many models. Overall, Ford has this new idea and they're implementing it quite well, but they are reducing the number of variables, the number of models. Let's say you've got an F-150 XLT. Well, let's say the F-150 in all. They want to cut how many F-150 models can exist. With a model, one example of an F-150 can be if you look across all the F-150s and there's at least one difference among them. Let's say before it was in the hundreds of thousands that could potentially exist and all be different by at least one factor. They want to cut that way, way, way down. And that's the case for all the models so that, more similarities, less choice, but Ford traditionally has been the company with the most choice when it comes to being able to build and get exactly what you want. You could say they're the Harveys of, Harveys to hamburgers. You walk into Harveys or Subway and you make it the way you want it. Ford was basically offering that to its customers, offering far more options than so many other manufacturers, probably offering you the most options, and that's going to get cut back. So CEO Jim Farley has revealed that the strike may have even more future implications. So, quote here from Farley, "Our reliance on the UAW turned out to be we were the first truck plant to be shut down," Farley said while speaking at the Wolfe Research Global Auto Conference in New York. Goes on to say, "Really, our relationship has changed. It's been a watershed moment for the company. Does this have a business impact? Yes." That's what Jim Farley had to say about it, and use the words. They're going to have to think carefully, in quotations, about where to build vehicles in the future. So previously, the UAW and Ford got along really well and avoided strikes since the 1970s. I really hope they continue. Really hope they continue to make a lot of vehicles, especially the high profit models. They can still afford to be made in the US. I hope they continue to be made in the US and Canada. It's part of why, I really support Ford and other manufacturers that build vehicles here, that help employ us, that help us have a thriving economy. So Ford has over the years chosen to continue to build in the US, especially their trucks. Not the case for a lot of GMs and a ton of Rams, though it has reportedly resulted in a $7 billion annual cost disadvantage versus the competition. As such, Brett Foote writes here, as such, Farley somewhat left the door open for the future vehicles. Of course, including the much cheaper EV models. Maybe we thought EV models were gone. Maybe we thought, some of us were getting scared that, the F-150 Lightning would replace all petrol-powered trucks. Let's talk about that more right after we talk about Ford reliability. Folks, if you've made it this far in this episode, please hit that like button. Comment that you made it to the end of this episode. Drop a comment and share this information. Hit subscribe and the bell notification so you don't miss out. Mint Diggity, thank you so much for dropping comments, and Peugeot in it throughout the show. Thank you so much. Richman555, you are amazed how many Bronco Sports you are seeing in the city. Yeah, they're very easy to move around in the city. They've got a great turning radius, but surprisingly, the big Bronco is, I know I'm in the city half the time because of course my dealer is in the city. I live out a little bit more in the country, just on the edge of the woods, and I can say no matter where I drive the Bronco, whether it's off-road or in the city, the thing has an incredible turning radius. But Richmond 555, thank you for pointing out that the Bronco Sport does have you're seeing so many in the city, and I think that's probably a mix of, an SUV with decent fuel economy, great turn radius, and really good looks. People are really pretty rough on the Bronco Sport, and that's too bad because it's a good vehicle. My parents are loving their Bronco Sport. They have the Badlands, so of course the 2-liter turbo, 500 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque. They're actually pretty blown away by how much power their yellow Bronco with a black roof Badlands has, and They have almost a kilometer of private driveway, and currently it is unbelievably icy. And they've earlier on in the winter, we did have some dumpings of snow. They made it up great. They're even making it up and down their driveway with the ice. They came down for my birthday yesterday. Please, folks, do note that if you follow me on Facebook, the age I show isn't my age. I don't want to give my data, my personal data, over Facebook. And I may have put myself a little younger than I actually am. I'm a little older, but it was my birthday this weekend. Parents came down, spent time with Layla, and we took Layla off-roading. Mind you, right now, our most recent Bronco, the Wild Track, we love it. But it's mostly been a pavement princess, but we went off-roading, and we went for some extreme off-roading. But it was Layla's baby carriage that went off-roading. And comically enough, we were going up on two wheels, lots of shaking through the woods, scraped against some trees, and when we went through a field and had to pull her backwards so her head was at an angle, when we came out of that off-roading experience, we looked at her, and this was her face. And we're like, hey, look, she wasn't screaming or anything, but we're like, you know what? We've got a daughter that loves off-roading already. We're raising her right, folks. And I can tell you, as not a young man, not an old man, but kind of down the middle, having a family is the most important thing I've ever done. It is the greatest source of both challenge and satisfaction. And unfortunately, today's media tries to push the idea that having a family is awful, that it's not a source of happiness. A source of happiness is giving it all for a career, and I think that is just a bunch of crap. Yes, the WB, she's getting born into off-roading. What's great is once she's a little older, we will be taking her off-roading to a gravel and sand pit. Just has to get a certain age for Maddie to approve that. So let's jump into the show here at reliability here. Thank you so much for sitting through this. You've made it this far. I really appreciate you all. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. It really helps us out. Now, and Pooja, I will want to see your photos. You'll have to send us your photos when you're down in the Philippines. Ford reliability. Let's talk about that. We've got some great information in regards to Ford reliability. We're going to be talking about Ford reliability on various models. First of all, let's start with the Super Duty. The Super Duty, made in America, made by Americans, 9,000 workers in the plant that makes the Super Duty. So let's hope Ford continues. I hope and I pray that Ford will continue to make their high profit vehicles in the US and in Canada. We need these jobs. We're building them right, it looks like, because this is a top vehicle for reliability. And so is the Ford Ranger, the Ford Edge, even though it's going away. If you find a used Ford Edge, year after year, it is in a top spot when it comes to reliability. And what other vehicles? Well, the Ford Ranger was ranked third in 2024 vehicle dependability study. So the new Ranger is, they're perceiving that it will actually be reliable, and usually GD Powers, they get it right at first. Overall, their percentage of right versus wrong, they're generally getting it correct. When they go on 3-year-old Rangers, interestingly enough, on the 2023 JD Power US initial quality study, they found that the Ranger would be reliable. You go back to 2020 when the vehicle's 3 years old, also reliable. So they usually get this right. So let's cover this. Let's see if it's Brett Foote. Yes, Brett Foote yet again, writing great articles for us to catch up on when it comes to Ford Authority. So he was talking about how the previous generation Ford Ranger, that it's on the list of the most reliable used vehicles and most reliable 3-year-old models. After which the Ranger secured the top spot in its segment on the 2023 JD Power US initial quality study. So very interesting. Ford Super Duties made it up at the top of the heavy duty truck segment as well. Now, the Ford Ranger did rank third in the mid-size pickup segment, falling behind two of its rivals, the Tacoma and the Colorado. But it's worth pointing out that these were for the 2020 model year, which is notable given the fact that the Colorado was redesigned in 2023. So the Colorado had been around for quite a while. And the Ranger and Tacoma are also all new for 2024. And the 2024 J.D. Power U.S. Vehicle Dependability Study is based on the responses of 30,595 owners. So I do like J.D. Power's any company that looks at a ton of people. I'd say that's worth looking at. When they only look at, let's say, 100 or 1,000, if they only interview 100, review 100 people, 100 owners, I don't consider that to be a good study. So the VDS study does focus on 184 specific problems across areas covering 9 categories such as climate, driving assistance, driving experience, exterior, features, controls, displays, infotainment, interior, powertrain, and seats. And he just goes on, you can read the article, but he just goes on to say that J.D. Power's initial quality reliability study, and when they cover those vehicles once they're 3 years old, when they're covering roughly 30,000 owners, they're pretty spot on. So you can follow that study. Now, oddly, sometimes, things move around a lot. You look back to 2019 U.S. initial quality study, and I'll read them to you here. You had Genesis as number 1, Kia number 2, Hyundai number 3, and Ford in number 4. And now Ford is way down the list. But I'm not a huge fan of the initial quality study, actually, to be fair with you. The IQS initial quality study, IQS, because they ask owners sort of a general question. It's kind of like, other than going for an oil change within your first year, did you have to go to the dealer for other reasons? And most of what gets you either at the top of this list or at the bottom of this list, such as this year, Tesla being way, way, way at the bottom of this list and Ford being pretty far down too, a lot of it has to do with issues with technology. And sometimes that's part of the 18-inch problem. And by the 18-inch problem, I mean the 18 inches between the steering wheel and roughly the headrest. So the driver, a lot of those issues are with the driver. I can say on a daily, as an insider, I'll tell you, on a daily basis, we have people coming in. Some of them end up at service, in which case it would count as a visit to service beyond just an oil change, because their cell phone Bluetooth is off, but they blame the vehicle, so it gets reported in the system that there is an issue that has occurred other than an oil change, and that does affect your initial quality study. So it's not just looking at, there's no waiting. A blown engine somehow is worth the same as someone whose phone has disconnected from the vehicle, and you've got now a technology problem. Well, it's often an 18-inch problem, that 18 inches occurring between the steering wheel and the headrest. So I think we need time. Truly, my opinion is you do need time to figure out who's reliable and who's not reliable. But let's talk about someone who definitely is reliable, a model I think many of us can love and respect, unless you're really getting worked up, thinking everything has to be electric. Of course, we've got the Bronco that everyone loves and respects. I'm not talking about reliability in this one, mind you. Scotty Kilmer did try to trash the Bronco as if it's some unreliable vehicle, and his reasoning was because of all those blown engines. Come on, folks. We all know that there's very few 2.7 liter V6 engines blown, that they did blow because of some bad pieces that were put into the engine for a small period of time, and that was worked out. So it's a fantastic vehicle. This is my third. I think I might end up keeping this and actually paying off the loan over time, because I've thrown on a wrap. Usually I don't, once I start modifying a vehicle, I end up keeping it, but it's got a front clear wrap. I've put many coats of ceramic coat on it myself, so lots of time invested. I've got the handles. I've got the blow-off valve in the front. I've had the front hood repainted. And that's, an important point to reliability is I'm okay with recalls. Recalls means the manufacturer is offering to pay for something so you don't have to pay for it. So I really like how Ford was really great. There's a little spot on the hood for whatever reason during the paint process. The spot on the hood didn't get covered. Whole hood got repainted. My back hinges in the back of the vehicle. Two of the hinges that hold the door. So I had a spot here. I'm not sure if you see the mouse cursor, but it was right around here, a tiny little spot, but slowly rust would have formed there. Got the whole new hood painted. They threw me on this new Wild Track sticker on the back. Two hinges got repainted, all under warranty, didn't cost me a thing. And this back window, this is the changed piece. Ford gave me a brand new window because this was starting to curl up. So more important than reliability, because no one makes a perfect product, more important than reliability is a manufacturer being responsible, giving good customer service. And the customer service I've gotten on this Bronco has been incredible. A little flap was lifting up here so a thief could, put in their finger, don't even need a screwdriver, just their finger and pull, and take this window off, and then they had access, into the things in the back of this vehicle, in the back of this beautiful Bronco. Ford covered that. No issues at all. Didn't have to fight for them. I've wrapped the front blow off adapter, so it's sounding sweet. You can't get that on a V8 unless it's got a turbo, but the V8s with turbos pretty rare. I'm running Nokian tires, so I'll cover all that. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you don't miss out on our Bronco videos coming up. We'll be talking about the problems we've had with our Broncos, the solutions, and we'll show you how a baby seat fits in this, how a stroller fits in the back trunk. So we'll have a nice little 10-minute video on all that. But I want to cover, I think, an incredible story right here in regards to Ford reliability. 210,000 mile 2008 Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 is still rocking it. So you've got this over at Ford Authority, and look at that beauty. That's a ton of mileage, folks. And superchargers and turbos, call me crazy, but they put an added strain, and really quite the added strain on vehicles. And this vehicle with its supercharger has survived 210,000 miles. It's easy to make Toyota, for example. Many Toyotas have really great reliability, and the engines last a really long time. But most Toyotas are boring and have comparatively very little power. It's easy to make an engine that can handle, let's say, 400 horsepower, but then if you only give it 280 horsepower, yes, it's going to be a very long-lasting engine. You over-engineered it. Just how Porsche 911 from 1999 to 2005 under-engineered their IMS bearing because, well, on certain models, up to roughly 10% of IMS bearings fail. The engine blows, and you have a $25,000 repair that Porsche has never accepted responsibility for. There's no recall. There's no coverage. So that horrible customer service means I'd say those 911s are potentially hot garbage. But if Porsche would have come along and said, you know what, if it happens to you, we'll take care of your engine. Or, here's a recall, bring them into the dealer, we'll check your IMS bearing, we'll check for bore scoring, once every, 2 years, we'll check for our customers, and if we see bore scoring, we'll change out your IMS bearing or just recall the whole IMS bearing. They went from an IMS bearing that had roughly 1% failure rate in 1999, and they're like, well, this isn't good enough. Let's put in a different IMS bearing, and the IMS bearing that they had from 2000 to 2005 has roughly what's estimated to be 10% or a little over 10% failure rate, causing a blown engine and $25,000. So the real issue here is bad customer service. Hyundai have made some horrible engines that, they've made one or two horrible four cylinders that blow up a lot. But at least they have given, kind of a lifetime warranty on it, which you have to fight really hard. I have a customer, a client, a guy I know, at almost 300,000 kilometers, got his new engine in the vehicle. And he said it was very, very difficult. It took a very long period of time, lots of fighting, but at least it was possible, and he did get a new engine. So when it comes to reliability, folks, it's not just about reliability studies. It's also about customer service, how you get treated, and what manufacturers are willing to admit. And Ford is great at, they're basically running after problems, offering to change them. And journalists, not always being the best of people, journalists and politicians seem to more and more be, walking down the beach hand in hand together, helping each other out. More and more the journalists and politicians are working together. And originally, the media, part of the Constitution, the media was seen as a counterbalance, as a protection against those incredibly powerful political parties. So when you get political parties completely owning the media, you've got a major problem. Even when you take it down, not just about big, huge politics, even when you take it down to local politics, you could say local business interactions. Marie, who's not here this evening, she's taking care of our daughter, but she had a friend who was on a road test at a dealer, and this dealership is, many dealerships under one name. And they were a passenger, and they told the salesperson, slow down. No, seriously, he said, seriously, you're scaring me. Please slow down. And he asked the salesman who was driving to slow down several times, and the vehicle ended up rolling over and having an accident. This individual was trying to become a gym teacher, and it made it so that he couldn't follow his education for a while. It gave him a lot of hardships. And here you had this big network dealer threatening this individual, saying, you're the one who owes us. It's your fault that the accident happened. And then because the local media had a lot of advertising dollars coming in from all those dealerships under one owner, guess what happened? That first wanted to run the story. They were going to run the story. And then an editor stepped in and said, we can't run that story. They're a major source of revenue for us. So that's just a very small local example of how media and politics, or even big business, media needs to be independent. The best media is independent media. We can't get censored and get told, if you talk about, whatever it may be, whether it's a political issue, a health issue, starting with a C. We can't allow ourselves to live in a society where you just talk about a topic and your way of life, you get shut down on the medias, and maybe, in our case, we have a business from this. We just completely get shut down. So, and Peugeot mentioning that in 1999, Mazda had a bunch of bad engines, so no hassle, swapped his 99 Miata motor with no hassle in under a week. Yeah, that's what's important. And Mazda is relatively very reliable. I find Mazda and Toyota reliability to be similar, but Mazda being far more exciting than the Toyota product, despite having a Toyota MR2 in my garage. That was a different generation. But it's all about service. So Peugeot, thank you for giving that excellent example. So folks, I'm wrapping this up and saying that reliability is more about service and responsibility. There should have, instead of reliability studies, they should have responsibility studies. Good manufacturers take care of their buyers, just like good human beings take care of their kids and don't run out on them. Folks, have kids, have families, stay together, create family units. It's the source of happiness, major source of happiness in life. It will put meaning in your life. So there I go with an anti-agenda comment right there, because that's not the agenda that's being pushed these days. Now let's cover a new topic right here. Let's talk about new models and huge changes at Ford. So this is what many of you have been waiting in this show for, talking about new models and huge changes at Ford, the Ford specific information. So we're going to be talking about a new potential Ranger model, a new potential Bronco model, a guaranteed 2025 Ford Maverick interior and exterior refresh and what that might mean. Let's talk about a potential 1,000 horsepower Ford vehicle. That gets me pretty excited. I barely got that information out without stuttering. Here I go. I get a little shaky and excited. 1,000 horsepower. That's what I likey. We'll also be talking a little bit about Jeep. And we'll finish off the show in just a moment. In another episode, we'll talk about how Ford is losing billions with the EV adventure, what's going on with the EV adventure. But we'll be talking about the Ford Puma EV in this episode. So folks, before we get started, help this small family business out. Hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss on any very important Ford information. So let's get back to this right here, right now, new Ford models, big changes. We just finished talking, catch our episode on Ford reliability. Ford reliability is great, but Ford responsibility is a whole lot better. So we've got the 2025 Ford Maverick refresh. I am excited. I don't know how I could ever get one of these because with the price drops on the Ford F-150 Lightning, I owe so much more than it's worth. Great if you're shopping for a Lightning now. Horrible if you bought one when they're on their peak prices. This guy right here. I had a feeling prices would come down, but I also thought that our community would love those Lightning videos much more than they did. I thought I'd have a lot of income coming in from the Lightning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten it. I thought it was going to depreciate quite a bit when people thought I would actually make money from reselling this vehicle. Dealership almost didn't want to let me have it. They pushed me later. I got it about 7 or 8 months later because they thought I was buying it just to try to flip and make money with it. And my argument was I will probably lose about $10,000 from purchase price after roughly 6 months. Turns out to be many tens of thousands of dollars more. I paid $112 and on trade it's worth about $70,000 right now after 1 year of use. So that's pretty tough, pretty bad. That's the ugly of this live episode. But let's talk about the good. This is the good news. So let's talk about it right now. We've got a refresh coming for the 2025 Ford Maverick. We might get an ST model, and the ST model would mean big dark mags, a lowered stance, and potentially even a 2.3 liter engine out of it. If so, it's not going to be cheap, folks. It's going to be expensive. And that's where a lot of the debate is going down on the Ford Maverick. Should the Ford Maverick come out with more unique models that bring in more excitement to the brand? And they will be expensive, but also maybe getting that initial price higher. And should the base get more stuff? You've got some people unfortunately complaining about the current Maverick. Oh, I wish it had a bigger touchscreen. I wish it, did this, did that. I wish it was more luxurious. I wish it didn't have as much plastic on the inside of the interior. I wish the suspension was beefier. I wish there were more engine options. Well, folks, those are all wishes. You're, without realizing, wishing that the vehicle was considerably more expensive. And that's where we're at right now. Ford's got to deal with this. They want to sell. Their goal is to sell these vehicles and make a profit. But do they make a profit by giving people what they're asking for? So a whole lot more luxury and, quality parts, and the price goes up. So you sell less, but maybe profit margins go up. Is that going to be the recipe for keeping the doors open to the factories, keeping everyone working? Or is it continue to give the market not necessarily what they're asking for now, but let's face it, folks, why has the Maverick been so unbelievably popular? It's been so unbelievably popular, I think, because it's got an amazing price point, because you can have a truck that is pretty darn well equipped for almost half the price of an F-150. This thing has been stellar, and with groceries going up 3 times because somehow meat processing plants keep somehow catching fire because policies are changing. because in certain countries they want to randomly kill off, in Ireland, kill off, in Europe, in one European country, kill off 200,000 cows because somehow that's going to save the planet. Folks, we've had a lot more carbon in the atmosphere previously than we have right now, and we're not even that far off from not having enough carbon in the atmosphere to sustain plant life. We're at 0.04 particulates of carbon in the atmosphere, and under 0.02 plant life dies. We've had many multitudes. We've had 0.7 particulates of carbon in the atmosphere before, and things were still going, there was still life on planet Earth. So I don't believe this big carbon scare. I think it's just another example of added taxation, added serfdom, trying to create this, go back to that good old system of serfdom that there existed in the 12, 13, 1400s. That we just essentially rent everything, that we don't own anything, and that there's just no middle class. There's just almost everyone's poor and a serf, and very, very few people own everything. Well, I like this truck. It's rebellious. It goes against the curve. It goes against this agenda of everyone renting everything, because this is actually an affordable truck. So yes, while I think it would be exciting to get new, a better, maybe a little bit better interior, I like the current interior because I love the price. So what might we actually be getting though out of the 2025 Ford Maverick? Well, we are going to get, how Ford camouflages things says a lot. Obviously the doors aren't changing, folks, but we probably will see, like we saw with the recent update of the Ford Escape. What did we see? The hood is a little different, goes down a little further. The lights are very different. The grille is quite different. And the Maverick, we're probably going to see, maybe a change in either the bumper, the grille, or the hood, or all three. Might be a little change on the side fenders. It's possibility, and maybe a little bit change, some change in the back. You could have one or all of those. And on the interior, Ford Authority here is already taking some great spy photos of course, the camouflage truck. Thank you, Ford Authority, for bringing us those. Check the article out. Probably written by Brett Foote again. Brett Foote, I'm liking you, man. Love to meet up at some point during my adventures driving and visiting in the States. But they also have a spy photo of what looks like that may very well be, instead of the up vertical screen, that 8-inch vertical screen that sits on top of the dash, this looks like an integrated horizontal screen, maybe like the one in the new Ford Ranger, which, remember, the Ford Maverick is on the C2 platform. That is the platform that is shared with the Ford Bronco Sport, the Ford Escape, and pretty much the Lincoln Corsair. It's a fantastic platform, but you might maybe getting the base. So instead of the Ford Escape 13.2-inch screen, which is, horizontal and looks great, you might be getting a vertical screen like on the Ford Escape. So maybe you'll get the new Ford Escape, which is on the T6 platform. You've got the, Ford Authority I love it that they didn't just say, hey, it's like the one on the Ranger and expect you to go find images of it. They gave us an image right here, and you can see this image here. Kind of looks like maybe the image right here. So I think we're going to get a new redesigned interior, and I think the interior is going to blow people away. They'll be very surprised compared to what we have now. And I suspect, based on a little insider talk, or maybe a lot of insider talk, that we will get, so that's the current Ford Maverick interior. I definitely think that we are getting, I can't confirm this, but I can say I highly suspect we're getting an all-wheel drive hybrid non-plug-in Maverick for 2025. And folks, you will love it because they are very reliable and cost of ownership is extremely low. And a lot of that is from huge fuel economy savings. So let's continue, folks. You've got potentially a really cool Ford Ranger. So you've got the Ford Ranger MSRT, actually debuted in, odd, we say it as if it's a D, but it's a T, whatever, debuted as a sporty European street truck. I think this would do very well in our market. Please, Brett Foote, thank you for covering this. Please, Ford, make this available. That is a truck I would buy, especially that I can't get the Ford Ranger Raptor. Looks like our dealership's probably only getting one. And this is going to be true for many dealers. Many dealers will get 0 Ford Ranger Raptors, and ginormous dealers might get 10 or 12 for the year, but probably have a list of 30, because right now we have 5 orders for the Ranger Raptor and 1 is getting filled, and I'm number 2. I'm not a number 2. You can write that in the chat. It won't break my heart. I won't cry over it right now, maybe later, but I'm number 2 at the dealer for a Ranger Raptor. So being that I would get that in probably 2025, I'm maybe rethinking that option. Bill Forrest, thank you so much for the support. Tom Dinder, thank you very much. Chatting with M. Peugeot, you make a great point. The XL Ranger is nicely equipped and is now $40K and looks amazing. And M. Peugeot says he'll eat lab meat when Taylor Swift gives up flying in private jets. M. Peugeot, I love the comment you just made, and it reminds us, how is it, if carbon is such an important issue, why is it that you have some elites that within 3 months can use the carbon an individual would, your average individual would, over an entire lifespan, but nothing's getting done about private jets? Nothing is getting done about cutting down trees for toilet paper when we could all have a bidet at cost is about $40. The government, instead of giving huge electric rebates of thousands of dollars to go out and buy an electric vehicle, could just say, hey everybody, here's a free bidet. It barely cost us anything to give everyone a free bidet, and now we're saving billions of trees each year that soak up carbon, help cool off the planet. Remember, trees, forests cool off the planet. Cities heat up the planet. And what's the global agenda about? Getting everyone to rent and putting them, almost everyone, in major cities. So more cities. Oh, that's great. So apparently we're doing all this and we're being taxed more because we want global temperatures to go down. Why are we making more cities, folks? Asphalt and concrete are bad. The cities we do have, we should, if this was an actual issue, we would be covering them with grass and shrubs and trees. And that's not happening. We would stop cutting down trees and give everyone a bidet. That's a toilet that actually cleans you with water, and it's far better for you, far better for trees. And forests cool. They have this process, and the word's not coming out of my to mind right now, but they have a proven process of cooling down the air. Cities heat up the planet. So if CO2 is really a major issue, you make a great point. You'll start eating lab meat when Taylor Swift stopped taking private jets. I think lab meat is ridiculous. Italy has actually banned lab meat, so good on Italy. Smart move, and there's a lot of farmer protests going on in Europe, and I don't want to comment on it because my free speech, I don't have free speech. I have a YouTube channel and it's a business for me, and YouTube has already threatened to delete it's not a threat. They just say, hey, if this happens again, it's a strike. And if you have 3 strikes, we delete your channel. I guess that's not a threat. They're just speaking facts to me, and they get to have their free speech and I don't get to have my free speech. So isn't that lovely? And, do recall in Canada, pretty ridiculous. People had their bank accounts frozen for having an opinion. Having a peaceful, non-violent opinion in Canada can mean that you got arrested and you got your bank account frozen. You can be a journalist in Canada and ask a politician a question and get pushed around and shoved by a bodyguard, and you get charged. You get charged. So there's definitely a lot of censorship going on. It's not okay. For high, for low, thanks for the support. YouTube, M. Peugeot says YouTube, it's a threat. It's not a threat, it's a promise. Yeah, very, very much. But being that I got the threat just because I played a little clip it, and it wasn't a copyright infringement. It was I got charged with misinformation because I played a piece from from Fox News, where the Surgeon General was questioning and saying, I want proof that there aren't adverse health effects, and until then, I'll recommend not getting a certain medicine. It's one of my lives at the 142-minute mark for Ford ditches boring, and that live didn't even get flagged. Reloading the show to cut it up into mini episodes, that's when it got flagged. It still hasn't been flagged, but anyways, I got flagged already once, so I don't want to, tell them exactly where to go flag me again. But I got flagged because I played that, and then I said, look, neither side, FDA or the Surgeon General, has proof. But what's important is that both sides can present proof that can speak freely. We can all speak freely so we can come to better conclusions. And supporting free speech, making a statement that free speech is important, that's what gets me a strike. Ridiculous. Rumble is not working very well for me. I go to load stuff into it and it just never loads. It gets canceled. Otherwise, I would slowly be trying to get all of us over to Rumble. But I can't do that because Rumble is not functioning at very little. Very rarely can I actually upload a video to Rumble. And I've tried over and over, and I go on to Reddit and I look at people's comments. I'm not the only one who is suffering this. Yes, Randy, you will see a bit of me on Rumble. Some of my videos are on Rumble. Maybe live is all I could do over at Rumble. But right now I want to build up a community over there by posting videos over there. So until I find out how to post videos over there to slowly build up the community, I won't do a live. I will keep the lives here, and I will be a good boy, and I will allow my politicians to censor me, because YouTube gets... Essentially, it's not as if YouTube wants to necessarily censor people. It's that they get pressure from elitist politicians, the same type of politicians which have been proven to magically have gold bars and tons of cash sitting around in their house, to have houses and cash given to them, and they don't even get jail time. It doesn't even seem like they get a slap on the wrist. They get caught, there's a fiasco, and then nothing happens. So, I definitely won't start talking about, right now we're in February. I certainly won't talk about the 6th of January. But I will say you could definitely look into that and look into the video footage that somehow very unjustly took over a year to get released. Took the Speaker of the House being changed just to have that information, though, that video footage of Capitol Hill actually getting released. The fact that that footage was kept from being released is an indicator and a sign of the times we are living in, folks. Awful, awful, awful. But look into it. Look into possible FBI interference. Very, very interesting. I certainly won't and can't have an opinion on it, but I do encourage you all to be as informed as possible. And I'll keep you all informed and keep this channel running by sticking to the news on the vehicle. So this Ranger is a Ranger I think a lot of us would buy. Beautiful, beautiful. So that's the MSRT. Beautiful thing of beauty. Look at it from the side here. Even if it had awful mags, this thing would still, it's got great lines. You've got the door pleat in the middle, which helps make the doors look a little less large, which is great. You've got the pleat up here in the box, which is going, also lines up at the front, all through front to back. You got that pleat. This truck looks awesome. So Ford, please continue to give us in volume to satisfy the market. Please continue to give us models like Peugeot said, and a Ranger XL starting at a very reasonable price. Continue to give us models for the Ford Maverick that start at a very reasonable price. I'd even totally accept completely different interiors, sort of like how Ram has the Ram Classic. After all these years, they're still offering the Ram Classic. Instead of just not changing the style and making it so that everyone on the road is like, oh, they went for the Ram that's, dirt cheap because we're all tired of that style. Change up the exterior, keep it modern, keep it recent, but maybe have very different interiors offered. Make a Maverick XL, keep the current interior essentially. But then when you go up to XLT, upgrade that interior. And when you go up to Lariat, upgrade it again. Put the newness on the new models. And Peugeot. Yeah, every media seems to have their angle, and this is why I much prefer independent media. I like to follow different sources on X, different sources. I do appreciate the work that Tucker Carlson is doing. It's very brave of him to go. And I wanted to cover this on the show, but then I said, "Ugh, I better not. I've already been slapped on the wrist." But I think it's incredibly courageous that he interviewed the president of Russia, that he interviewed Putin, because he knew he was going to essentially, people would imply that he's a traitor for doing it. Hearing other parties' opinions and having their version of the facts get presented isn't treasonous or treacherous. It's what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to give us both sides of the story so as adults we can decide for ourselves. Instead, mainstream media being owned by the big three corporations that are running the planet and pushing their agenda, instead we get fed information, and essentially they're not telling us what we have to think, but by excluding all the other narratives and only giving you this and information, well, your opinion can only be found between here and here if you don't have any of the extra information. That's what's disgusting. That's what I have a major problem with. And Peugeot, yes, it was an absolutely great interview. He is doing some very, very important work. Now, the interior of this this MS model, MSRS, look at that. Or was it MSMT? Sorry about that, folks. The MSRT, that makes me think a little too Dodge. Maybe for our market, they could not go with RT. I'm thinking, Challengers and whatnot. But no matter what, I'm thinking that is a unique interior, and that looks incredible. I'd pay decent money. Hopefully a little bit less money than a Ranger Raptor, and hopefully actually available, because right now this was a European debut. Let's hope we get it for our market. Now, Randy Schenk is offering, I like that family name. Good strong family name, Randy. Any Canadian dealer get Ranger Raptor allocation? Yes, many dealers. Most dealers will get 1 to 4, because our Canadian dealers are a lot smaller than the huge dealers, let's say down in Florida or Texas, where they might get 10 to 20 even Ranger Raptors. A lot of dealers here in Canada, if it looks like a small dealer, very good chances they're getting 0 Ranger Raptor allocations. I'm at a pretty big dealer. We're getting 1. The biggest Canadian dealers could get maybe 3 or 4. So that's the question you need to ask the dealer. If you want a Ranger Raptor, how many do you have on order already? How many allocations are you getting for the year? Or just ask them, do you have a free allocation available? And if they say yes, you can ask them. So you're telling me if I'm the only order, or if you have one available, when is it going to be? When's the next time that it's getting produced? Because you should get your order picked up. For example, right now, for almost all the models, Ford is picking up orders for the month of April. So if you put in an order now for almost any Ford model, it should get built in April unless the dealer has no allocations for that model, or they're already all used up by the orders that are already in the system. And a smart dealer, and do business with smart dealers, but a smart dealer will be able to say, yes, I still have allocations for April available. You will get built unless we get hit with some bad luck. You almost certainly will get built in April. And if it's not in April, well, then it should be in May. If they can't tell you that, I'd be weary and I'd order my Ranger Raptor elsewhere, because some dealers, they're just not going to get a whole lot of these Ranger Raptors. All right, so that's what's going down. We've also got some interesting, far more interesting coverage here to talk about. And that's in regards to Gen 2 EV production. So Ford is promising that Gen 2 EV production is going to be on its own platforms. They are going to be very, very different than the current models. So you know how the Ford F-150 Lightning looks a whole lot like an F-150 petrol-powered vehicle? That's because it's the same platform. The new EVs are going to run on their own platform. We might very well get a Ranger EV, but if it comes more towards Gen 2, they'll likely also carry their own names. And Ford is promising that after 12 months, these Gen 2 EV vehicles are going to be profitable. So guess what, folks? EVs aren't going anywhere. So the fact that Ford has been, and here's some more interesting news. You've got the Puma, and let's go cover that right now. The Ford Puma is probably very good chances it's going EV. Lots of rumors, lots of speculation. So let's check this out right now. Ford Puma Gen E officially announced, as an all-electric variant. So this was previously a rumor that I was covering, saying that it would be very likely, and here it is. We will be getting an electric Puma model. I bet this is Brett Foote again. Brett Foote's doing great jobs. Let's just look at that. This is a great seller over in Europe. So having it as an EV is going to be great because it won't be extremely expensive, because Ford, Jim Farley has been talking that the plan is not to have more models like the F-150 Lightning. High, very expensive, big, expensive electric models. The goal is to have a lot of inexpensive electric models. Why? This makes total sense, folks. This is to avoid bankruptcy caused by the government. Governments will fine automakers billions of dollars if they're producing essentially too much CO2, if they're using too much fuel. They need to get, as time goes on, closer and closer to the 50 mile per gallon fleet average, because apparently carbon's going to destroy the planet. Either way, these are the facts. Manufacturers have to deal with it or pay billions of dollars in fines or send billions of dollars to buy tax credits from Tesla. That means helping your competitor out dramatically. So Ford's going to be smart. They're going to make electric vehicles that can sell in very high volumes. They're seeing that the Lightning, with its higher cost, isn't selling in very high volumes. So they're going to make a lot of inexpensive electric vehicles. We're talking, high 20s throughout the $30,000 range. So probably roughly from about 29,000 US dollars to about 45,000 US dollars. They want to have a lot of those models. And this ties in with Ford's plan from the last decade. As an insider, reading insider information from the last decade, I can tell you this does fit in with Ford's plan. They put it on pause when battery prices tripled or quadrupled during the whole, the last 3 years. But now that Ford has lithium iron phosphate batteries that cost roughly about a fourth of the price as regular lithium ion batteries, because they're not using rare earth minerals, or not as many rare earth minerals. They're costing less to produce, roughly 4 times less. They're going to be able to actually provide these low cost electric vehicles that will get high volume sales. That'll help bring down that mile per gallon fleet average, help avoid those billions of dollars either sent to Tesla as carbon credits that they buy, or to the government as fines every year. Ford, folks, is going to survive. This answers the question, what's going to happen to prices? Well, at Ford, they're going to go down because they're going to offer you relatively inexpensive electric vehicles. What's going to happen to EVs at Ford? Are they going to bust Ford, bankrupt Ford? No, they're not going to bankrupt Ford. What they're going to do is they're going to actually save Ford from spending billions of dollars in fines. And on that, we've got this Puma Electric. It's a bestseller in Australia, but we also have some cool news. More chances, more and more. From day one, there is insider talk about a plug-in Bronco, and that it would come in later, and then even further down the road, quite possibly, nothing guaranteed, but an all-electric Bronco. But right now, what's much more likely is a plug-in Bronco. Why is that much more likely? Well, Ford is benchmarking the Jeep Wrangler 4xe as a possible Bronco competitor. And I think this is going to happen. I've been hearing this for far too long, from almost day one, and I've been hearing so much about this. And now that they're benchmarking Jeep Wrangler 4xe, I'd say this is going to be attached to the 2.3 liter engine. I covered this 2 years ago when Volkswagen, a high up at Volkswagen, let a little slip out about the 2.3 liter plug-in. In Europe, the Ford Ranger 2.3 liter plug-in is a thing. It's announced as an actual thing. Based on the insider talk and how the Ranger and Bronco would have similarities, I'd say it's almost guaranteed. It's just a question of when that we get a plug-in Bronco. And that's, I think, pretty exciting. Now, the Wrangler is pretty interesting. And now, let's not poo-poo on this. That 2-liter 4-cylinder on its own, meh, as a plug-in becomes very interesting. More expensive, yes, but also very interesting because with it, a 17 kilowatt battery, it ends up bringing that 4-cylinder 2-liter turbo up to 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, providing owners also with a short electric driving range. At Ford, I'm thinking this will probably end up being the engine with the most amount of torque in the Bronco. It'll probably have more torque than the Ford Bronco Raptor. And I love torque. Torque equals a fun driving experience. So we can definitely look forward to that, folks. Now, what else can we look forward to? Let's check it out. Let's talk about 1,000 horsepower over at Ford. This is a real thing. So 1,000 horsepower, potentially quite possibly coming to Ford, because Magna did say that they're going to be selling a near 1,000 horsepower engine to one of the American companies. And guess what? Ford has had a very interesting and historied relationship with Magna. So we could see a high-end EV motor coming to Ford. No idea what it would be in, but it's nearly 1,000 horsepower. And this is wild. This is wild here. Magna said it's going to one of the big three. So the Detroit big three, you know who they are, Ford, General Motors, or Stellantis, apparently are getting this 800V EDS Duo. That's a pair of motors, inverters, and gearboxes generating a combined output of 726 kilowatts, or the equivalent of 974 horsepower, and 5,900 pound-feet of torque. Obviously, they will have some sort of control unit making that torque probably max out at whatever, maybe 1,000 pound-feet of torque. They will definitely cut that down, but that's what, unhampered, that's what the electric motor can produce, and it is built in the Ramos plant in Mexico. So that is really, really impressive stuff. So those are that's a lot of our exciting new information coming to Ford. Now let's cover the last topic of the night. If you've made it this far, please comment near finisher, because we're very close to finishing this episode. Let's talk about something that's near and dear to me, because talking about the future of Ford is very important to me. I wouldn't continue to cover Ford if I didn't believe in their vision, where they're going. And I know the internet talks a lot about how awful EVs are. I've had my electric truck now for a little over a year. I absolutely love certain aspects of it, and it hasn't been perfect. You can watch my videos about how the experience hasn't always been perfect. I've had a lot of love and a little bit of, there's one element that I absolutely am actually hating about it. And I hope March 1st, when I have my appointment, my third time they look at this, I hope they get my Blue Cruise sorted out. I'm the only one so far that I know that has had an issue with the Blue Cruise, but it's kind of a pretty serious issue with the Blue Cruise. So you can watch the video on that. But right now, let's talk about whether Ford is going to, are they one and done with electric vehicles, and is the market in general? You watch YouTube, and every YouTuber is just saying to people what they want to hear. They're telling people what they want to hear, that EVs are a one and done, that everyone's losing billions, and because of that, it is done. Guess what, folks? A lot of people on YouTube are just making videos to make money. They don't care about what they say. They're treating YouTube like an OnlyFans page. That, they don't care what crap they show you as long as you're buying. And guess what, folks? I don't consider our community here. I don't want to treat you like a bunch of OnlyFans watchers. So I'm okay with having a whole lot less fans but covering the real deal. If that works for you, please help this small family business out. We got poodles to feed. We got poodles to dress. No matter what, Layla is going to get fed and dressed. We also have the daughter. We're a small business. Please, pray for us. And in the meantime, like and subscribe. When you get to the end of a video, if you do hit the next video, even if you don't watch it, you just let it run on your laptop, TV, or computer. You let it run to the end and you let a few episodes run. It will actually get YouTube to figure, hey, you're liking this enough for us to allow other people to see it, to peruse it, to see it pop up as a thumbnail and have a chance to click on it. Otherwise, the videos don't get suggested, don't show up on anyone's feed, and no one even has a chance of finding our community here. We're a good community. I'm loving the people in the community. Douglas Blair, I'm loving the comment you made is making me laugh. Douglas Blair says Johnny loves his real fans. Yes, I love my real fans, but we're not. I'm definitely not treating this community like an OnlyFans, saying anything just to get clicks and likes. I want to cover the real deal, even if the real deal often isn't what people want to hear. People want to hear that dealers are completely, motor feed style. Dealers are, sorry, that's maybe the wrong name, but there's this, there's several different YouTubers that will cover things like dealers are completely screwed and now they're completely stuck with their inventory and they're getting exactly what they deserve. And everything is super, super negative. And I'm here to talk cars. Generally, we're going to buy cars, right? Do you just want to hear horrible, negative stories about cars? Or do you want to, even if the general atmosphere, car buying atmosphere at times can be very positive or very negative, I want to cover how you can still get a deal, how you can save thousands, and where we're going. Now, M. Peugeot, $20, that's a ton of money, my friend. That's extremely generous. You're saying that for the foot and poodle pictures, yes. Feet websites, oddly, are very popular as well. So weird stuff is popular. I really appreciate the $20. That is very, very kind, folks. You don't have to do that, but it's very, very appreciated. Bill Forrest says, we would love to sit down and pick your brain for some time. And talk about some good ideas, buddy. So yeah, we can maybe do that if we can make it down to Florida this year. We've got some difficulties between the dogs and Layla being young, and the whole skull being too flexible, too malleable. We hope we can make it down in the first week of April and sit down with people at a Ford garage. But here's the direction of Ford. Ford is going to continue to make electric vehicles. Ford is actually going to make a lot of electric vehicles. Many of those are going to be in the high $20,000 to roughly $45,000, $50,000 price range as starting points, because Ford wants to have a lot of vehicles that are starting roughly in the $30,000 range, because they need to sell a lot high volume electric vehicles to be able to continue to make money on the F-150s, the Super Duties. All the gas, petrol-powered vehicles can only continue to exist if Ford, gets a really high mile per gallon average. Companies very soon need to be above 50 miles per gallon, otherwise they pay billions of dollars in fines to the government, or billions of dollars to buy carbon credits from their competitor. That's crazy, folks. You can't just feed billions of dollars to your competitor and all your other competitors are being forced to feed billions of dollars to your competitor. So then Tesla's like, yeah, great, we're making so much money. If they make so much money from carbon credits, they could theoretically be giving away their vehicles just so that they can get billions of dollars from the other manufacturers, slowly killing off the other manufacturers and increasing their volumes over time. They'll never be free, those Teslas, but Tesla nonstop is dropping the price on their vehicles, whereas legacy automakers like Ford, GM, generally Volkswagen, generally people are losing money. So not people, but companies are generally, overall, more companies are losing money for every electric vehicle that they sell than making money. This is a wild time, folks, and so many people on the internet are saying, because people want to hear that electric vehicles are going to disappear, because we like our old sneakers. You like that old comfortable slipper or shoe. You know, you've got your lucky basketball sneaker, your lucky golf shoe, pair of shoes. I've got my lucky business shoes that I wear to work. I've got 3 pairs. I like to always wear those pairs. I don't want to sell them for anything else. Well, we're like that with our gas-powered vehicles. And you know what? Gas-powered vehicles, we have a lot of reasons to love them because they've got sound, they've got character, they have a soul. Electric vehicles, they're so quiet, they kind of feel a little soulless. And they're costing companies billions of dollars. Now it's recently been released, I believe it's that Ford lost $4 billion this year, or $4.5 billion. I thought Ford would lose $4 to $5 billion because of EV vehicles. Not overall, but just on their EV vehicles. They lost $4 to $5 billion. In 2022, they had lost $3.5 billion. I knew they had sold more and that profitability hadn't gotten better. So that's why I figured that Ford would be roughly around $4.5 billion loss just for their electric vehicles. But Ford is saying that future EVs will be profitable 12 months after launch. They're also going to have their own platforms. There's going to be very little choice. So they're going to cut down your ability to have all sorts of options when you're ordering them. Think of the new, if you look at the order guide or go build a Lincoln Nautilus online 2024, you can see there's so many less choices than there were even 2-3 years ago. You're going to have less choice, kind of like ordering a Toyota, or picking out Toyotas, I should say. You're gonna have less choice, but these vehicles are gonna be technological marvels. They're gonna be mind-blowingly beautiful inside and out. So this isn't all bad, folks. Even the inexpensive models are gonna be very impressive aesthetically and performance-wise. They're gonna be very impressive. Maybe not as impressive as, you know, the Lightning with its near almost 800 pound-feet of torque. That is a sweetness. That is most excellent. But you will get designs not quite as futuristic as this, but you are going to get some very interesting designs. These are going to be beautiful vehicles. You're also going to get inexpensive vehicles and only a few big, you know, think of the Lightning, think of an electric Aviator. You're only going to have a few really expensive electric models. The majority of the electric models are going to be inexpensive, very affordable. So Ford, congratulations, going against the agenda of, you know, being all of us being forced to rent everything because, you know, the prices of everything just becoming so unaffordable. Food more and more unaffordable. Hey, a lot of people figure, wow, my property just almost doubled in value over the last few years. Fantastic. Well, yes and no, because it also means that your taxes end up increasing dramatically. It also means that when you go to sell your home, it's probably going to get bought up by a corporation because BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street have trillions, tens and tens and tens of trillions of dollars to buy up every piece of real estate they can get their hands on to then rent out. And as more real estate gets bought out by corporations, more and more people are renting. The future is concerning me, but I am happy that Ford is fighting all this by actually going to be offering us affordable roughly $30,000 price range starting points on several EV models. Not just one EV model, but several. Because guess what? As people, we like to own vehicles that are a little, you know, they'll look a little different than what the neighbor just bought. If the neighbor just bought a red Mustang Mach-E Select, you're thinking, well, if I get a red one, maybe I want it to be a little nicer and maybe it's going to be a premium model. Great deals on the premium model since they just went down. So folks, electric vehicles are not a one and done. You heard it here first, or roughly first. Electric vehicles are not a one and done. Many more models to come from Ford. All new platforms, meaning their style, their look, and their interface and how you interact with them are going to be mind-blowingly different. I'm an insider and I'm promising you this. The changes are going to be drastic. How you interact with the vehicles are going to be drastic changes. Their looks and aesthetics are going to be drastically different. So buckle up, folks. And no, petrol-powered vehicles aren't going away. While Ford is saying that Gen 2, so we're talking vehicles starting in about 2 to 3 years, electric vehicles in 2 to 3 years from now, Ford is saying they will be profitable 12 months after launch. Once they start selling them in dealers, 12 months later, they will be profitable. And this does not mean that Ford is getting rid of their gas-powered vehicles. They're doing this to help get that 50 mile per gallon target, to not pay billions of dollars to the government, to the government in fines for made up carbon stuff. Sorry, it's not made up. That'd be misinformation. Of course, everything that we're told, never question it. It's always true. Of course, we've never been lied to, you know, unless you open a history book and you look at all the times we've been lied to. You look into the JFK story and what happened to him and why. Wild. People, let's all try to be as informed as possible. And I do like that, RFK is, I like what he's saying. He's waking people up to how the world works, how elites function. But good on Ford for not getting rid of the electric vehicles. They're going to have these EVs, so the mile per gallon, so the carbon, the whole carbon story, that they meet the criteria to not pay billions of dollars to Tesla, or even more in billions of dollars of fines to the government, so we can continue to have gas-powered vehicles. Gas-powered vehicles are here to stay. Now, of course, big V8s are going to have to be they're going to be expensive, more and more expensive, because they need to sell them in lower and lower volumes. High volume EV sales are really going to help, though, so that we can still have V8s in small numbers, and that we can still have 6 cylinders with twin turbos in relatively decent numbers. But do expect more and more sales to be getting pushed towards models such as the Ford F-150 Power Boost. And that's a 6-cylinder twin turbo with electric motor, because folks, as we move forward in the future, it's going to be unbelievably important for manufacturers to have a good fleet average when it comes to mile per gallon consumption. And Ford is going to have, they've talked about this even before, early, back in 2018, 2019, they're talking about the direction that profit margins on models would go down for dealerships, but that dealers would have less inventory, because part of the big Ford plan is that dealers make less profit. We all get our vehicles at, a better price. I won't get into that whole story, but, less than they'd have to charge. So dealers will have less profit margin, but there'll be less vehicles on the dealer lot, so dealers will pay less inventory. There'll be less options for how you order vehicles at Ford, because Ford has been number one for years and decades now for having the most amount of options that you can throw on, the most amount of variations within a model. They've been number one on the market for that, but that's going to get cut down. The available vehicles on a lot are going to get cut down, because the idea is to have types of vehicles with the different powertrains and the different trim levels on lots, but not in every single color, and that we will then order from the factory and get that vehicle within roughly 3 to 6, 7 weeks. So mark my words, folks, that's the future at Ford, coming from an insider. So buckle up, please subscribe, hit the bell notification, and thank you so much, folks, for watching the show. If you've made it this far, type finisher. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Sitting through my rants, you can completely disagree with me. Tell me why. Share, we all have a certain database in our minds, data that's in our minds that help us make our conclusions. And it's important that we discuss freely with one another, because someone with a different data set, and thus a different opinion, well, they share their data set with me, I share my data set with them, and guess what? We both come out smarter, more knowledgeable, and capable of making better decisions. This is why, this whole notion of cancel people because they said something that is offensive is the worst thing ever. You don't cancel people for saying something offensive. The system should be going in the opposite direction. We need to have conversations with those people. We need to share our data with them so that they can learn. And you know what? Even people that are offensive, There's probably things you can learn from them because maybe they're saying offensive things because of things they have been through, things they have seen. And that can be a cautionary tale for going to in one extreme. It's through dialogue that we avoid going in extremes, and we can have compromise, and we can have a society that we're all comfortable living in. It's crazy. It's as if people have forgotten about the Constitution, that people have forgotten our forefathers and the principles that they shared, and that was learned from having lived under a system with kings, and that prior to that, being in Europe, it was based on generational knowledge from having been serfs, essentially slaves, with no middle class, where you just served your lord. Let's not forget history, and let's not allow people to change and thwart history to try to feed their agenda. When people lie about history and misuse history, like when they pretend that there were never any, for example, never any Christian slaves that existed, that's ridiculous and awful. There was a lot of Anglophone Christian slaves. There was actually slaves, essentially Caucasian slaves of all sorts of languages and cultures. But there's millions and millions of slaves. I'm not going to get into this right now, but struck down, and all the work we've done together and our community will completely get deleted. But I do really appreciate you all, folks. David Wall, thank you for typing in finisher. Encourage others to do so as well. Ridgeview, yes, RFK is very interesting. Tucker Carlson is asking some important questions, and I'm very happy he came to Canada to give people a wake-up call. So Douglas Blair, 4 high, 4 low. Thank you so much. Randy Shank, thanks, man, for making it in. M. Peugeot, you made it through the whole episode. Thank you. I'm happy we kept your attention. I really appreciate the $20 donation. Unbelievably generous of you. Thank you so much. Now, Michael Powerosnik, thank you very much. I'm sorry I'll have to practice pronouncing that name because I do want to continue to learn and grow as an individual, and debate and freedom of speech helps us all learn and grow. Meet up. Yes, I do. I am still hoping. And Michael, thanks so much for making it into the show. I do hope that we can meet up in Florida at Ford's Garage. I do have a dog sitter for the 1st of April, so that's worked out. We've just got to figure out, do we fly Layla? What's with the young baby, is it safer to fly with her, or is it, and then we want to wait until at least her milk, it doesn't need to be sterilized, because that's a lot of extra equipment, hence April. Of course, we'd rather be not dealing with the adverse weather here in Canada and go to Florida right away and see you all, but we can't, because it'd be too complicated with having to sterilize her milk. Now, we'd love to drive down to Florida, but babies have very soft, malleable heads, and we can't have her in a car seat getting pressed in on for 20 some hours straight, even 12 hours, and stopping in North Carolina to meet up with our good friend Dwayne. We all know who Dwayne is, where his channel is, so please check him out, subscribe to his channel. Good family over there, good, very, very good people, smart individual. I respect him greatly. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for making it into the show. Thank you for surviving my wild rants. Folks, we're a community, and I look forward to seeing you. The adverse weather it canceled the Daytona 500, but it didn't cancel this show. So thanks for making it in. We'll see you all hopefully next week. Minimum condition, I do a live every second Sunday, but I do try to do a live every Sunday. And when I don't, well, that's when I put the time into producing a show where I can premiere and chat with you all in the comments section. So do watch out Sunday afternoons to Sunday evening. There'll always either be a live, unless something drastic happens, there'll be a live or a show that we premiere. We still have 1 Maverick episode to do, and we've got about 3 Bronco episodes that we still need to edit. And when I say we, I mean me. Marie's all taking care of the baby. It's the job that she has chosen to do now, and I'm putting in extra work to help feed that family. Thank you so much, folks. Have a great week. God bless and good luck to everyone.